So when we're solving equations, what's our goal? What are we trying to do when we're solving an equation? We're given this equation, it has a variable in it. We want to get that variable by itself. So our goal when we're solving any equation is to get the variable by itself. And what that means is we want to get the variable on one side of the equation and everything else should be on the other side. Now when we do this, most equations, the equations that we've solved so far, we're going to have the variable on one side of the equation, we're going to have a number on the other side of the equation. We will run into some equations later on where we're going to solve for a variable, but there's going to be a different variable in it. And so we'll have the variable we're solving for on one side, and then we'll have the other variable and some numbers maybe on the other side. All right, but our goal when we're solving an equation is to get the variable that we're solving for by itself. Now to do that, we're going to have to get rid of some things. And to get rid of things, we can use inverse operations, but we have to follow the golden rule when we do that. What does the golden rule say? Yeah, so on your notes it says whatever you do to one side of the equation. The golden rule says you have to do to the other, or you must do to the other. All right, so if we use, let's say we use addition to get rid of a subtraction. So there's a minus 2, we use a plus 2 to get rid of it. We would have to add 2 to both sides of the equation. Not just to get rid of the minus 2, but also to keep the equation balanced. All right, so we want to get the variable by itself. We're going to do that by using inverse operations and the golden rule, which says whatever we do on one side, we must do on the other. So there were some steps that we followed to solve equations. Last semester, we saw about 5 different types of equations. So what we're going to do today is we're going to put all the steps together into one set of rules. So if you follow these 4 steps that you're going to write down here, you can solve any equation. All right, so the first step, just like always, is circle the variable and draw the line. All right, so we're going to identify the variable, which means we're going to circle it, and then we're going to draw the line through the equal sign, and then we're going to continue from there. I'll give you a minute to write those down, and then we'll talk a little more about them. If you remember when we had variables in different places and when we had parentheses involved in the equations, we had to distribute and combine like terms. So that's the next thing we would do there. Sometimes when the variable was on different sides of the equation, we had to get the variable on one side by picking on the little guy. You guys remember that? So we would get rid of the smaller of the variables. And then once we do that, we just have to use the golden rule to get the variable by itself. There are a couple of types of equations that we don't really mention in here. There is one more thing we would need to do if it has a square or a square root. You guys remember what squares and square roots are? What's a square root look like? Yeah, the square root is the thing that looks like this. You guys remember that? So if it has a square root in it, or if it has a square, which would be something like say 3x plus 1 squared. So if it has a square or a square root in it, there's one other thing we're going to do when we get started, besides circling the variable. And what's that? What else would we do? Yeah, we would put a box around the square of the square root. And so that's a reminder we have to do whatever it takes to get those by itself first, and then we can get rid of the square of the square root. So that stuff's kind of in step 4 here. That's built into that, but don't forget about that also. You'll need to do that. All right, so we're going to use this now to do our opener for today. The opener is just going to be a review of solving equations like these. So like the ones that we did last semester.